What's going on, guys? Nick Lott Show, Spreaker Web Radio. I got a lot to dive into on this episode. Big weekend coming up in college football. Some marquee matchups. I'm gonna break some of them down. Like I said, got a jam-packed show. We got LSU and Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama. The SEC East is wide open. A little bit of a Heisman watch later on in the show, and is Mac Brown on the hot seat in Austin? So without further ado, let's dive into it right now. Biggest game of the weekend, LSU at Georgia. Zach Mettenberger returning to the University of Georgia, where he was recruited as one of the top 10 pro-style quarterbacks, according to Rivals.com. He was kicked off the team for violating team rules. Played at junior college, transferred to LSU. Didn't play too well last year as a starter, but without a doubt, the most improved quarterback in the NCAA in my mind. So far this year, 59 for 91, 1,026 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And a lot of this has to do with the acquisition of LSU's new offensive coordinator, Cam Cameron. Les Miles, Cam Cameron, they go way back. They've coached together before, and this is one of the guys that Les Miles actually trusts with calling the plays 100%. And I mean, you see what LSU's doing on the ground too with Jeremy Hill. I mean, they have a deep backfield. They have great wide receivers, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Kadron Boone. The list just goes on and on. And with this young Georgia defense, they lost a lot of their playmakers from last year. Jarvis Jones went to the NFL. They lost a lot in the secondary and linebackers. Young defense, LSU is firing on all cylinders offensively, and their secondary is, in my opinion, one of the strongest in the SEC. But with Zach Mettenberger returning, how much pressure on him? That's kind of up for debate, how much pressure will be on him. I honestly think that LSU can go into Georgia. Game day is going to be there. It's going to be a wild, crazy atmosphere. But I think with this offense that LSU is producing this year, and the fact that Mettenberger has drastically improved just decision-making, throwing mechanics, I mean, it's just night and day. Because I remember watching him last year. I mean, he has an unbelievable arm. And he couldn't throw the deep ball. He was overthrowing his wide receivers by 10 yards last year. I mean, that's great that you have the arm strength, but you have to learn how to harness it. Working with Cam Cameron this offseason has definitely helped out Mettenberger. But Aaron Murray in Georgia, I mean, he's been in that system for 3 years now. He almost won an SEC championship last year. That came down to the final play of the game against Alabama. Aaron Murray has quite a bit of credibility himself, and I'm leaning towards picking LSU, but this game could go either way. But with what LSU has offensively this year, and the fact that their defense is stepping up, I like LSU in this game. I think Zach Mettenberger will take control of this game offensively. Jeremy Hill ran all over Auburn last week. Definitely, I mean, he's on fire right now. He's one of the guys in my Heisman watch that I'll get into later on in the show, but he's on fire. I mean, he's 6'2", 235 and runs a 4.5 40. I mean, that is tough to stop. And with J.C. Copeland blocking for him out of the backfield, I think it's going to be too much for Georgia's young defense to handle. And I think LSU is going to win this game 24-14. So another game in the SEC, number 21 Ole Miss at Alabama. Alabama, should they be ranked the number 1 team in the country? Their defense hasn't looked like what a Nick Saban defense typically looks like. They're allowing a lot of guys downfield. You saw that pretty evidently when they played A&M here in College Station. But I mean, it's early in the season. I think they're going to work out the kinks. Granted, Bo Wallace came out and said that he believes that Ole Miss has the best wide receiving core in the country. I haven't seen too much of Ole Miss this year, so I don't know how I feel about him coming out and making that broad of a statement. But historically, Alabama has just demolished Ole Miss, and with this game being at home, Alabama kind of looked a little shaky against Colorado State this past weekend in their home opener. But I think A.J. McCarron offensively, T.J. Yeldon, they're just going to be too much offensively for this Ole Miss defense. And what's going to be the key is if Alabama can keep up with the speed that Ole Miss runs offensively there in that no-huddle spread offense that you saw worked wonders against the Alabama defense when A&M did it. Granted, Bo Wallace is nowhere near comparison to that of Johnny Manziel. I've gained, honestly, like I've mentioned numerous times before, I think Johnny Manziel is a great football player. Just what he can do with the ball in his hands is just absolutely amazing. If you get the chance to see him in person, go do it, because I watched him live at the LSU game here in College Station last year, and just the way that he can extend plays is just absolutely ridiculous. But back on the subject with Ole Miss and Alabama, like I said, Alabama's running attack, it's going to be T.J. Yeldon's just too good. I don't see this Ole Miss defense slowing him down. Points on this game, Alabama obviously favored. 21. No, Alabama's going to score more than that. 35-17, Alabama over Ole Miss. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that prediction. Be right back. Nick Lott Show, Spreaker Web Radio. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be listening. Thank you. I appreciate it. Be right back. We'll talk a little bit about Texas Tech, what they need to do this week during their bye week. Some quarterback controversy between Baker Mayfield, Davis Webb. Who's better? I'll get into that more on the next segment. Nick Lott Show, Spreaker Web Radio.
Mayhem is everywhere.
I'm your 10-year-old neighbor. You told me I could come over and shoot baskets anytime I want. So here I am, working my prepubescent muscles. Last time I was here, I learned a little trick. At the angle on the hood of your car, bounces the ball back to me in perfect rhythm. Thanks for parking under the hoop again. You're the best neighbor ever. But if you have cut rate insurance, you might not be covered for this. Or this. So get Allstate, where agents keep you protected from mayhem like me. And he shoots from downtown!
Get the coverage you need and the discounts you deserve from an Allstate agent. Dollar for dollar, nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate.
Call your local agent, 1-888-ALLSTATE, or go to allstate.com. Savings and protection based on coverage selected and are subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Actual savings will vary. Allstate Property and Casualty Insurance Company, Northbrook, Illinois.
Not so fast, not so fast, double, not so fast, brother, ooh, not so fast, double,
What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Nick Lott Show, Spreaker Web Radio. What to get into this segment? Something that I did want to get into when I was talking about the LSU-Georgia game that I completely skipped over in my notes. This game is going to have a lot of implication further down the season. The SEC East right now is wide open. Top three contenders, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Kind of excited to see what Florida is going to do the remainder of the year without their starting quarterback, Jeff Driscoll. Tyler Murphy took over last weekend against Tennessee after Jeff Driscoll broke a bone in his leg. He will be out, like I said, for the remainder of the year. Going to be interesting to see what Tyler Murphy brings to the table for the rest of the season for Florida. But the SEC East is wide open. If Georgia goes on to win this game, I look for them to take control over the SEC East and play the winner of the West in the SEC Championship. But like I said earlier, I think LSU is too strong of an offensive team and defense. They're too strong all around for Georgia right now with that young defense, like I talked about a lot last segment. But the SEC West, I really think the SEC West is going to be an interesting division to watch this year because you have A&M losing to Alabama, and LSU plays Alabama later in the season. Say, for example, LSU goes on to beat Alabama on the road, and A&M comes in late November and beats LSU on the road. Three-way tie in the West. There would be a lot of debate about who's going to go to the SEC championship, and I heard people breaking it down, and this is the simplest form that I can break it down for you. What the way this playoff is going to come into play next year, that's going to eliminate this whole problem, in my mind, because with each of those teams losing one game, it comes down to where these teams rank in the BCS rankings. So I think A&M would go in the event that everybody lost one game out of Alabama, LSU, and A&M. Because A&M lost early in the season. They have enough time to make up ground, climb their way in the rankings. If LSU knocks off Alabama on the road, I would expect LSU to rise into the top 3 in the nation. But granted, that's pretty far off right now. So this all remains to be seen. I mean, A&M could lose this weekend to Arkansas, which I think that's going to be a great game, honestly, because with Brett Bielema taking over at Arkansas, he's implemented a power run game, and that's going to be a key this week in this game. In Arkansas, will Brett Bielema's offense be able to stay on the field and keep Johnny Manziel off the field? Because A&M defensively this year, let's be honest, they haven't looked that great. Granted, they played SMU last week and I think gave up 13 points. But that was SMU. They're not great offensively. I mean, June Jones runs the spread there, but I mean they'll spread you out, but A&M sees that every day in practice. But with this power run game, I definitely expect Arkansas to try to control time of possession, keep the ball out of Johnny Manziel's hands as much as possible. But I still think A&M is going to win that game. What I really wanted to get into on this segment, Texas Tech 4-0, excuse me. This season with Baker Mayfield as a starter, we've seen action from Davis Webb also. And I've talked to my dad, Texas Tech alumni, about this quite often. He personally thinks that Baker Mayfield is not as good as Davis Webb. And the way I see it is he's 4-0 as a starter. I mean, he's a true freshman walk-on. He's learning all this stuff on the fly pretty much. They have a bye week this week that will allow them to straighten some things out offensively. What's really surprised me about Texas Tech this year is their defense is looking quite all right. I mean, their defense kept them in that game against Texas State. I was a little worried watching that game offensively. Jace Amaro, by far one of the best Texas Tech receivers this year. I mean, he's a huge guy, 6'5", like 270. Definitely expect to see him play on Sundays. He's just a great talent for Texas Tech to have. I mean, I've seen so many plays over the middle to him where he's just wide open. He's going to be a weapon when they get into Big 12 play. They kick off Big 12, I am all sorts of out of whack right now with my notes. They beat TCU. That was their conference road opener